Maybe I will start with the irony of risk aversion that I believe many humanitarians are not really thinking about, but unfortunately ending up being there. And that irony is that the more we are fearing taking risks of, let's say, going to the transitioning to the private sector or transitioning to something else in the public sector, transitioning to being our boss as the humanitarian crisis continues unfolding, the more we're afraid to go there and take those risks that feels like risk, the more we keep choosing the safe option of staying in the humanitarian sector and not creating plan Bs and Cs, the more we are putting all of our eggs into one basket, so to say, and the more we are pressuring ourselves of things working out, and the more we wait for things to work out, the more we get then desperate as we see our savings depleting. And then the more we desperate we get, the more we risk. And the more we risk, the more we feel like we need to now save our desperate situation, and the more things tend not to work. And that is unfortunately oftentimes is the outcome of risk aversion, where we just keep feeling like, okay, if I just keep avoiding any risks, then I will be safe, is actually what is getting us to getting the desperate situation or being in the desperate situation, and then being so difficult to come out of that desperate situation. Therefore, I would like to talk to you today about how to recognize that you are generating these risk aversion identity even more and reinforcing it even more, and the outcome or the impact of that reinforcement that is actually creating more risks for you, for your life, and for your loved ones, and what you can do about it. Hi, if we haven't met, my name is Asela Monova. I'm a life coach for transitioning humanitarians. And first of all, I need to say thank you to all of you who have been messaging me, who've been sending all the love for the difficult times that I'm going through with my family, my mom passing away, and processing through a lot of that grief. In that process, while it continues, I also felt like the calling to continue working and continue doing things that I love, which is supporting my humanitarians in these tough times. So that's why today is the first time that I felt like, okay, I would like to resume. And therefore, here I am talking about risk aversion. So I want to give you an example that I feel like is very representative of many humanitarians that are currently going through these tough times of funding crisis. I coach a lot of humanitarians who say that they would like to stay in the humanitarian sector even though they're not sure if that's for them or not. Some people say that no, this is what I would like to continue doing anyway if it was up to me. But then they're not really thinking about plan Bs and Cs because they just feel like this is all they know. This is what they keep doing, and they keep applying for jobs. They keep applying for hundreds. Even like some of my clients tell me they've applied for 700 or even over 1,000, and they keep tracking them as well. And they keep applying and they keep applying. They've spent 7 months, 10 months, a year, or sometimes even more. They keep doing the same thing, because they fear that they are risk averse, they cannot really venture off to other sectors, other things. They're not even allowing themselves to look at other options, or they are looking at other options but not really taking committed action. They're not really committing to making the plan B and C work, whatever that may be, whether it's going to the private sector, public sector, to other sectors, to being their own boss. They don't really take those options and plan B's and C's seriously, and therefore they just keep putting all of their eggs, so to say, into making the humanitarian sector work. And then after so many months of having depleted their savings, having depleted their resources, and having been rejected so many times, and feeling so powerless, desperate, and feeling that all of this is not working and is not going to work, and then also feeling that they have wasted a lot of the time that they could have spent any other way. And all of this because of this identity, or because of this fear of being risk averse, because they just feel like they're not the people who can take risks. Now, I would argue that this is not really true, especially for humanitarians, because we, as humanitarians, I believe we have taken a lot of risks in our career, but the difference might be because we have taken those risks back in the day when we had maybe different age range, maybe we had different passion level, maybe it was because we were so fascinated and so obsessed by the humanitarian cause, and that's why our drive for the cause was so great that we didn't even think or look at the risks at the time. We just kept going and going on missions and doing things that we really love doing or we wanted to do, and therefore we didn't even notice there were risks involved, even though back in the day the risks were involved, going to the dangerous duty stations and doing working with counterparts that we have never worked. There were a lot of risks involved anyway back in the day, but we probably didn't really pay attention too much, or we thought that we were so determined and we were so committed that we were willing to solve any risks involved with that. And nowadays, many of the humanitarians that I coach, I believe, are struggling with this because we don't really have maybe that level of drive and determination and commitment to be pursuing something or thing that we want to, or we don't believe enough that we want to pursue and have that determination and persistence. And therefore, it just feels like the risks are everywhere. And the only way that we're handling most of the time is avoiding them, right? And we just feel like if we keep avoiding those risks, whatever those might be, then we just will be safe. But unfortunately, what that safe is leading us to is depleting our savings, depleting our resources, depleting our emotional resources, mental resources, to be then staying in that desperate mode and not being able to get out of it easily, because desperate mode is the mode where we have depleted essentially everything, we have lost faith in everything, and then it becomes so difficult to get out of it, right? So that's why my advocacy point here really is not to let yourself get to that place where you just lose faith in everything and you have experienced a lot of disappointment, a lot of failures you feel, and then you just feel like you can't do anything about it. That's the main message that I would like to send to is the more you avoid risks, the more likely you are going to stay in that mode or getting yourself to that mode, desperation mode, that we really don't want to get to. So that's why we need to start understanding how are we generating those risk aversions, those fears, how are we reinforcing them to recognize them, and then what we can do about it. And this is really the message that I would like to get to you, is the way that we generate those fears, those fear of risks or fear of taking any risk or risk aversion in general, the way that we generate is we just have this essential fundamental beliefs about ourselves that we cannot handle any risks. So if I put it into practical terms, if we are thinking about, okay, humanitarian sector is experiencing a lot of downsizing, at the same time a lot of people trying to apply for it, so therefore this sector may not have the likelihood of me getting the job. If that's what I believe, then what are my other options? And if I say, oh, these are risky options, then what am I going to do? I will not actually go and explore, and not only explore, but actually commit to making it work, right? So, therefore, the more we generate this risk aversion of, I can't handle that risk, or I cannot, I don't know what to do with that risk, then what are we going to do? We're not going to commit to making that work. We're not going to commit to solving the problems that come with that transitioning to the private sector. We will not be solving anything that comes with transitioning to being our own bosses. We'll just stay in the tunnel vision of, this has to work, I hope it will work, and then we will not be doing anything. And that's how we get ourselves to the desperation mode eventually after several months of trying. So that's why we need to understand the way that we generate these fears and fears of taking risk is by not trusting ourselves and our abilities to be solving whatever the problems that come our way. This is really how we generate fears and fears of taking risks. The way that we reinforce it, however, is by avoiding those risks, right? And that's, I think, something that many of us have been doing for a long time, is we just keep avoiding looking at those risks. We don't even make calculated risks, right? Some people tell me that I would like to take calculated risks. Amazing, but what does that look like for you? What is your version of calculated risks? And why aren't you calculating them and taking them, right? And I think the reason why, again, we're not really there yet is because we just are so good at avoiding any risks, avoiding looking at the risks, avoiding looking at what we're going to do about them. And therefore we just believe that if we keep avoiding and if we keep staying in this lane, then everything will be okay. Except that we keep getting evidence after evidence showing that it's not. But because this is a fear and it's very irrational and it's very difficult to put our rational mind to it, and therefore we just keep staying in the lane that we feel like a safe lane. But that's unfortunately the safe lane that's getting us to the desperation mode and is difficult to get out of it eventually. And I am obviously saying this from a lot of times being in that desperation mode and then realizing the reason why I got to that desperation mode is because I refuse to look at those risks. I refuse to look at what other options I could have created in the meantime. And therefore, I just kept believing that if I stay in this lane of safe lane, then everything will be fine. And then to realize, in my case, I think 8 months later, to realize I was in the same point all over. The difference was now I was desperate. So that's why knowing that how we keep generating those fears how we keep generating those fears of risk taking and not taking any risk, or even not looking at the risks, because of not trusting ourselves and our abilities to solve them. Therefore, we keep growing those fears, and the more we grow is the more we avoid them, and then it becomes this a vicious cycle that it's so difficult to get out of. And then the only way that we would then start actually doing something is when the desperation hits. The problem, however, as I said, is it becomes so challenging, even more challenging, to get out of that desperation when it hits. So therefore, in order not to get to that point, excuse me, I would like for you to start realizing how you are the one generating, without a lot of the time not consciously, obviously, right, keep generating those fears, and how you keep reinforcing those fears by avoiding them. And instead of doing the usual pattern of getting yourself to that desperation mode, I would like for you to start looking at it from the perspective of, okay, what is it that can get you exploring and committing to looking at options, other options beside the plan A? Because I'm not saying that don't do the plan A of applying for jobs or not committing. Absolutely go for it and do it, especially if you believe you have a chance of getting it. Amazing. I would like for you to look at what are the options that what are the things that are working within your job application process in the humanitarian sector currently, and what is not working, and what can you do about that. That's absolutely to go for it as a plan E or a plan A. And then looking at plan B's and C's, whatever those might be for you. For some of my clients, it is going transitioning to the private sector. For some of my clients, it is transitioning to the public sector. For some of them, it is going to becoming their own bosses. Whatever those plan B's and C's, looking at it from the perspective of, okay, what are the things that I need to be solving in order to make this plan work? And then how do I solve them? And that's how you start calculating those risks, right? That's how you start calculating those risks of, okay, what are the risks that I'm willing to solve, and what are the risks I'm not willing to solve because it's not worth it. And the more you start realizing that, okay, the plan B could look like this is the plan B by this time, and in order to get to that plan B, I need to be solving these risks A, B, C. Here are the ways that I'm going to solve them. Here are the ways that I will be exercising my trust, confidence in myself, in my abilities to be solving them, because there is really no option of not solving them, essentially. Because we know, again, that if we keep avoiding them, we're just likely to get to that desperation mode again, which we don't really want to be in. And before it's too late, it's rather we start solving for those fears by looking at, okay, these fears are telling me that I'm afraid that things don't work out. I'm afraid that I will fail. I'm afraid that I will, whatever the thing that, oh, that I will waste time. I'm afraid that it will all go bad. Whatever those things are, whatever those things you're afraid of, notice that they will always be something that we cannot test it yet. We haven't experienced yet. It is something in the future that hasn't happened yet. But our fear will always be saying things like, well, how do I know if it'll work out? How do I know this and how do I know that? And we will not know until actually we start working on it. And fear can never be solved by I don't know, foreseeing the future, because we don't have the ability to foresee the future. Fear cannot be solved by avoiding it, or by keep thinking about it a lot and not do anything. Fear can only be solved by actually taking actions and going towards them, right? Fear can only be solved by deciding, okay, these are the fears that I have. I have no way of knowing it yet because I haven't done it yet. So, therefore, the only way I can know is by starting to look at how am I going to solve in case this happens, this happens, this happens, and likelihood of those things happening anyway, and how am I going to handle them is the way that we start practicing solving fear, right? Fear cannot be solved, as I said, by avoiding it or by being afraid of that fear even more, because that just reinforces it. So that's why the only way we can solve the fear is increasing our confidence level in ourselves so that the fear decreases a little bit. And then the more we have this confidence and trust in ourselves and abilities to solve these things, the more fear will disappear. And the more we keep going for the things that we want to go for, in creating more of our options of plan B's and C's and committing to them, because without committing to them, nothing will work. And you probably know this from all your experience up to now. You have committed to the humanitarian sector all these years. That's why you've been very successful. You also have been very passionate and dedicated, loyal, and you thought that you could solve whatever the problems along the way of making the humanitarian career successful, and you have made that happen. And the same logic applies if you transition to another sector as well, is by looking at, okay, what are the fears that I have? How am I generating those fears? By not believing in yourself, in your abilities, in not having that confidence and trust in yourself, in your abilities, in your expertise. Okay, how do I have those trust and exercise those trust and confidence in yourself to be lowering the fear a bit, the voice of the fear a bit? It will not disappear. It will not disappear until you get comfortable in something unknown. So, therefore, what are the things that I need to be solving if I'm transitioning to the private sector, to the public sector? How am I going to do that? What are the specific challenges that will arise, uh, that will be presented as risk? And how are you going to solve them? And the more you start realizing that you are able to solve those risks, solve those fears, the more free and trusting, what is the word I'm looking for? The more liberated you feel that you could go in any direction you would like to transition and make it successful. And I feel proud of myself for having done this work of realizing that I'm able to go and do whatever the thing that I really believe I would like to do in life, going to that direction and solving anything in between. Any fears, any doubts, any second guessing, all of this I've been able to solve so that I no longer have that risk aversion. And the reason I want to tell you is that this is possible, this is available to every one of us if we recognize how we are able to solve the fear once and for all. And we're able to solve the fear in a way that it reinforces our identity of being the person who can solve anything and go for the thing that we want to, instead of keep reinforcing the risk averse identity. And I would like for you to experience that. So, my dears, if you would like to work on this, come coach as me. I would like to support you in learning all about your fears and risk aversions, learning how to change that identity of risk averse identity to a trusting, confident identity, to always going for what you want to and being able to solve anything in between. That's what I would like to support you in being. The link is in the below. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful week.